Hello, participants. Your facilitator remains Professor Isaac Sammani Butswat for this course ANP302. Today we'll be looking at the equipment and other things necessary for the production of these ruminants we have been talking about. That is the large ruminants and the small ruminants. I'm sure you have had a good time getting to know more about these animals, their breeds, how they reproduce, and so on. We'll make effort on that as we consider the equipment necessary to keep them comfortable and ensure high productivity. Enjoy yourselves as you listen. As said earlier, we are looking at the issue of housing and equipment in ruminant production. We'll look at the housing in cattle, housing in sheep and goats, and the necessary equipment and management practices in these ruminant animals. Housing in cattle. We'll look at the introduction, the objectives, the housing requirements for cattle production, housing for intensive system of cattle production, housing for extensive system of cattle production. We will look at conclusion, summary. We take some class activity and then references for further reading. By way of introduction, housing is an integral part of management. Hence, it is of great importance in cattle production. Housing must be well planned with adequate ventilation and sanitation facilities to enhance production both in beef and dairy cattle. However, the housing type depends on the system of production. At the end of this unit, you should be able to state the principles of housing types in cattle production, state the different housing types in cattle production, identify the different housing needs in cattle production. Housing requirements. To start a cattle production venture, adequate consideration must be given to how the animals will be housed for better management in a better environment to prevent theft. The following points must be considered while designing a house for cattle. The building must be sited on a well-drained and not undulating floor. There must be proper and adequate ventilation and illumination in the building. 3. There must be no drought or condensation in the building. 4. The building must be well positioned. Feeders and drinkers. 5. The building must be easily accessible. 6. The surrounding must not be bushy to prevent predators and disease vectors. Generally, cattle are housed in a well-shaded, open-sided structure called barns or cattle shed. This type of housing is common in the intensive type of production. The size of the barn depends on the number of cattle expected to be housed. An average of 2 to 3 meters square is allowed per adult cattle. The house must be well equipped with feeders and water troughs with adequate space for farm operations to take place. The floor of the barn is always concrete with rough surfaces to prevent skidding or falling of the cattle. The construction of the house is such that it has feeding passage with well-fitted mangers around the standing area. Drains must be constructed for easy washing, cleaning and evacuation of dung and other waste materials. Individual pens are also used in this system of production, especially for cows, breeding bulls, and nursing cows. This is a typical example of a cattle barn. Now, the housing for extensive system of cattle is less expensive. There are no standards for the housing of this type of system of production. One of them is called the cattle kraal, which is an enclosure in an open field or land where the animals are tethered or tied to pegs already installed. The walls of the kraal could be made of planks or wood, bamboo, mud blocks or stones. The animals are always housed here after the day's grazing. This is a typical example of a cattle kraal. You can see they are not very intensive class activity. Differentiate a kraal from a cattle barn. State any 3 important factors that must be considered when siting a cattle barn. Please endeavor to do these activities. In conclusion, in this unit, we have highlighted housing in cattle production and found that the different systems of production require different housing types. In summary, the purpose for housing of cattle must be considered before embarking on it. The production system must be identified, as this will dictate the housing type. For example, the housing need for an intensive system of cattle production is different from the extensive type. References and further reading refer to Williamson and Penn, 1980, and of course you can also Google. Thank you.